this thing. They say the first 4 seconds are the most important, right? Okay.
Remember, you gotta pose for the cool thumbnail. You gotta make it.
I did. Oh, you should have heard the beginning.
I heard it, but you gotta pose. You gotta make like some grand
Pose?
gesture.
Yeah, you know.
The algorithm. Oh, there you go.
There you go.
This is the most important shiur you'll ever.
This is the most important thing you'll ever hear in your life. L'chaim, l'chaim. Stay tuned, YouTubers. Don't go anywhere. Don't go anywhere. You can't imagine what's going to be. In. Okay. Okay, we started as Vav, and the Rebbe is explaining to us how all of the events in Hanukkah, ultimately, the source of the revelation was the highest level of godly revelation. So then why do we say Chav Dalet, Chav Hei, Chav Vav? There seems to be a difference in these two levels, and up until now we said, first they erased what was on our blackboard. Now we don't even have a blackboard, or whiteboard, whatever it is. So we said that the war was a function of Yichud Tatah, godliness being revealed in the world. The Pach Shemen, finding the Pach Shemen was a Yichudi Ilah, a level connected to the world, but a level of absolute unity. Not so much the unity of different parts, but the essential oneness. And then the miracle of miracles, the complete and total obliteration of the natural order, the oil burning for 8 days. And that was Chav Vav. And it was all a neat little package. But what? The Rebbe said that the source of everything that happened is the Mesiras Nefesh of the Chashmonaim. That Mesiras Nefesh was coming from the highest place, from the essence of their soul, a place where there's nothing but Elokus. And that's what ultimately led them to fight the war. But there seems to be somewhat of a contradiction in that whole statement, because if there's the basic understanding that we have of the reality of Mesiras Nefesh that comes from the essence of the soul is that on that level, there's no opposition. Right? And that's why it's such a powerful place in you and I. There's no Nefesh Bahamis on that level. On the level of Ratzon, of your will, which is a power of your soul called Chayir Shebenefesh, your godly desires. On that level, there's also a corollary in the Nefesh Bahamis. The Nefesh Bahamis also has will. Right? So there could be a battle. Your will could overcome the will of the Nefesh Bahamis, 100%. And a person could even come to a state of Mesiras Nefesh because their will to connect to a Kadosh Baruch Hu has overcome their will to live physically. Okay, that's real. But the ultimate expression of Mesiras Nefesh, and we learned this in Pada B'Shalom, and that's the whole Shalom of the Pada B'Shalom, is that it's all a state of peace, it's all calm, it all flows smoothly. Why? Because it's coming from a place where there's no opposition. But what's the problem that we saw yesterday with that explanation of the whole story of Purim? Purim for sure. Hanukkah, where I feel like Purim because the last night was a Farbrengen. I'm feeling like the day after Purim. What was our problem? What was the first miracle? What does a war entail? An enemy. There's an enemy there. Pada B'Shalom, Pada B'Milchama. This was a war. It's a battle. So the Rebbe says an amazing thing, that all three levels of the miracles of Hanukkah come from the same ultimate source. The Mesiras Nefesh of Matatziyahu Banav, which triggered a revelation of the highest level of godly reality, Havaya de La'ela. That's the whole story. But that level of godliness was clothed in nature very powerfully the first time, a little less the second miracle, and not at all in the third miracle. And what does that correspond to? The level of Aveda of the Chashmonaim. The Chashmonaim, the war, what happened? And this is the last thing we saw. This level of, and this is an amazing thing, and that's why on a certain level the war is the most important miracle. And we know that if it weren't for the war, nothing else would have happened. It's the least impressive miracle, so to speak, in terms of the spirituality of it. No one's going to go, wow, no, they don't go, wow, they go, psh, right? No one's going to go, psh, when the war happens, right? They'll be amazed by the fact that we won the war and we shouldn't have won the war, but okay, a miracle, but the miracle's happening in Gashmias. What does that relate to in terms of the Aveda of the Chashmonaim? That their essential relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu resonated in the revealed powers of their soul, which means that they didn't experience the complete obliteration of the enemy, right? There is no enemy. We talked the stories of the Friedrich Rebbe in relative to the Soviets. They don't exist. They're evil and they don't exist. And I'm going to relate to them as non-existent, right? That's not how they relate. No, they're there, and we have to fight them, and we have to come up with a plan, and they had it all figured out. Oh, so that's the last thing we saw, right? That let's just read the last 4 words on page Kuf Beis, and the first 5 words on Kuf Gimel, which is where we stopped. Hu lefisha gilu yechida, the revelation of Yechidah Shebenefesh, of the essence of their soul, Haya Ba'ofen, was in such a way that it was relevant to the revealed powers of their soul. Which on a certain level is the highest thing imaginable. It's not an obliteration of nature, it's the revelation. There's a basic question in the world, right? Basic question in the world relative to miracles. What's a greater miracle? The 10 plagues in Mitzrayim or Purim? Right? 10 plagues in Mitzrayim, complete and total obliteration of nature. Purim, you wouldn't even know there's a miracle if you didn't understand things. Right? So which is a greater miracle? So obviously on a simple level, and this is certainly true, the miracles in Mitzrayim are much greater than the miracle of Purim. On the other hand, what argument can you make to say that the miracle of Purim is even greater? I'd like you're on the debate stage, and you have to convince me. What's those things? You say something, you say, convince me I'm not right, whatever. Convince me I'm not right. I'll say Mitzrayim. Unbelievable, incredible, obliteration of nature. What's so astounding about Purim?
It's constant. It's totally constant. It's not like, it wasn't like a visible miracle.
It wasn't? There was still some concealment there in Purim, so then I'll say it's less. Why can I say on what level is it an even greater miracle?
Everything was done without violating nature. Everything was done in a way that it seemed to be the natural way.
Oh, yefeh, the deal. Within the context of the normal workings of nature, the Eibishter was doing things that were absolutely out of the box, so to speak. Right? Everything was elokus. It was all the Eibishter. And you never know. So on a certain level, that's an even more powerful expression of godliness, that the Eibishter isn't limited to revealing himself only within the context of a level beyond nature. The Eibishter can be revealed in an incredibly powerful way in the garments of nature, and that's the war. In the story of Hanukkah, that's the war. Right? So on one level, in one hand, it's a lower revelation of godliness, because it somehow, it's happening within the context of physical reality, and it can also be explained somehow, within the context of physical reality, right? How did the Israeli army win the 6-day war? Well, we wiped out the Egyptian Air Force in the first day, and that helped a lot. You can talk to some militarist, right, who studied in West Point, and he'll talk to you about the tactics of the Israeli military during the 6-day war. There's no question about that. Right? And were there tactics? Of course there were tactics. And they worked. They mamish worked. And in terms of the southern border, there's no question. They within half an hour of the war starting, there was no Egyptian Air Force. It's gone. Okay? Amazing tactic. But I think most people have an appreciation of the fact that was a rather miraculous victory. Right? Okay. You have to be pretty dense not to see the godliness and all that, right? But it was played out in nature, right? What we just experienced, how long ago, whatever, it was last Sivan, right? It was Sivan, Tammuz, Sivan. I mean, Iran, right? The tactics, amazing, right? No doubt about it, but also rather miraculous that it all worked out the way it was supposed to work out. And it's true, it's a pretty tricky thing to somehow get into the communication system of the Air Force in Iran and somehow get messages to everybody who's in the Tzameret, the high-ranking officers of the Iranian Air Force, that they all have to come to a meeting in such and such a place at such and such a time. Okay, so that's pretty tricky to do. I mean, that's pretty cool that they pulled that off. But they all went, and the bomb worked. It could also not work exactly the way we wanted. 15 guys, boom, Kaddish for every single one of them, right? Amazing. The whole thing was pushing amazing, right? Okay, so we can talk about that in terms of the amazing nature of it in the nature of it, and that's true. There's no question. And there's certain people who should be lauded and said, "Wow, you guys are amazing. Look what you pulled off." On the other hand, you also have to realize that, my goodness, this is the hand of the Eibishter helping this all work out the way it all worked out. There's this very, very clear miraculous nature to the whole thing. I mean, it was quite an interesting week and a half, sort of waking up every morning, literally wondering what miraculous event happened the night before in Iran. Like, what happened? And almost every morning you weren't disappointed. Something absolutely wild happened. Okay? So there's the miracle of it, but there's also the nature of it. And on a certain level, those are the greatest miracles. Because you see in a greater level, you see the unlimited nature of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to destroy nature in order to show us his tricks, so that's one thing. If he can even do his tricks in nature, that means he's completely beyond limitation. When we say he's beyond infinite, so that's what you see is beyond infinite in those states, right? Because he can also express himself in infinite in such an amazing way. And that's the Milchama. And that's why the Milchama is the source of it all in Hanukkah. V'loche, the Rebbe says, Gama or shelamayla mishtalshelus. Also, that level of godly light that's beyond the natural order, the third level, Havaya Delayla, Shenimshach al Yedei Mesiras Nefesh Elam, that was drawn down by virtue of their Mesiras Nefesh, quid pro quo, Mida Keneged Mida, their avodah triggered in a HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a like response. The highest level in you is being revealed, so the highest level in me will be revealed. Hanes, al Yidei Mesiras Nefesh, Hanes the Mesarta Giborim Biyad Chaloshim V'Rabim Biyad Ma'atim. Right, this miracle of you gave over the strong in the hands of the weak and the many in the hands of the few. Hayam Maluvash B'Teva, was clothed in nature. It's all happening naturally. There was a war. It's not that they just disappeared. Sancheiriv, right? Sancheiriv came to conquer Yerushalayim, right? Strongest king in the world. He came to conquer Yerushalayim. He was told by his advisors that today was the day. He had to do it today, and if he didn't do it today, then it might not work. There's a certain decree against the Jewish people that was not going to continue, right? Okay, so he gathered up, at least 125,000 soldiers and officers. There were probably more, right? There were probably more, right? I mean, there's different accounts. I mean, in Tanakh, in Shmuel, right? It talks of different numbers because it talks about the soldiers and also the officers and But anyway, there were well over 100,000 people there. And Sancheiriv comes to Yerushalayim and he climbs up on something and peeks over the wall and says, "This is it. Like this is the big Yerushalayim that I've come to conquer. I mean, I can blow this. I can just blow and it'll fall down. I mean, what's the big deal?" So he tells his soldiers, "Okay, look, go to sleep. In the morning, 5 of us will go take over the whole place." So what happened at night? An angel came and killed 125 or 185,000 of them. It's a pasuk. I don't remember whether it's 125 or 185. I apologize. Right? An angel came and killed them all. Well, cool. Machlek is how the angel killed them. with a sword. He just he made certain noises that they all died of fright. Whatever it is, they might have had they might have had a revelation of transcendent reality, meaning they heard the voices of angels hearing the voice of angels killed them. They were afraid. That's one of the positions in the Gemara. There's like 5 positions in the Gemara and Sanhedrin as to what happened over there. Fine, that's not what happened here. They went out and fought a war. That complete miracle. That's like the Pach Shemen. Right? That Shemen burning 8 days. Right? A Malach came, that's what the Pasuk says, a Malach came and wiped them all out at night. What do you assume that Malach's name was? What kind of Malach would do that sort of thing? It's one of the Gavriel, the Malach of Gevura. Gavriel was the Malach, and Gavriel came and wiped them all out. There were 125 or 185,000 corpses around Yerushalayim the next morning. Now that's a job. They went out, they fought. I would imagine some Yidden also died in this whole thing. I mean, I don't know. I've never read the actual account, but I would assume some Jews must have died in the battles, right? Not Matasyahu and his sons, as far as I know, but I mean, there was battles going on. I would assume some Jews died. That's the way it usually works. Right? People die on both sides. Usually less people die on the winner's side than the loser's side. That tends to be why they're the winners. But people do die. So there was a real war. And it was all that means, the Rebbe says, it was maluvish beteva. V'yaseidim yizu, the Rebbe says. Beteva de oilam hazeh hatachton, in the nature of this lower world. And what's unique about this lower world, as it says in Tanya, the 6th chapter, when the Alter Rebbe starts talking about the Nefesh Bahamis. Start learning Tanya today. Beteva de oilam hazeh hatachton shaklipos gevrim boy. Oilam hazeh is a place where klipa is seemingly more powerful than kedusha. All things being equal, without any work, klipa will win down here. In every single one of us, what aspect of us will win if we don't work? Nefesh Bahamis, and the worst expressions of the Nefesh Bahamis. And if we work hard, so then our Nefesh Bahamis can become an Edelid. Nefesh Bahamis can become a serious person who does good things and is a sensitive person and a caring person. So my Nefesh Bahamis can be like that. But my Nefesh Bahamis is not going to be like that if I'm not educated that that's a thing to do, and if I don't work hard on making that happen. If I just, sort of go through life and no one ever told me anything about anything, and what am I going to end up thinking life in Eilam Hazeh is about? It's all about somehow managing to get as much physical, emotional, and maybe even intellectual, if I'm that kind of person, pleasure as I can out of my time down here. I'll get as much pleasure as I can. Right? Might it be at the expense of you? Well, it depends how I was educated. I might be educated in such a way that no, it shouldn't be at the expense of other people, and other people will be educated, no. Right? A very, very famous American statement, which is one of the most disgusting things you'll ever hear, but it's just out there and no one says anything about it. Nice guys finish last. What a horrible thing to say. Who said that? The doc would know. He's a famous baseball manager. Nice guys finish last. No, they don't. Creeps finish last. Nice guys finish first. Right? Being nice means already you're first. Creeps finish last. You won the game. What difference does it make? You're a creep. Right? Okay. Right? What? Right? So, right? You're supposed to win the game. I get it, but you're supposed to win the game. You're supposed to play it fairly, right?
I believe the point of that is you're not supposed to play it fairly.
100%.
The point is to win.
Yeah, the point is to win. That's not. Okay. So that's the Nefesh Bahamis without any education, without the Nefesh Bahamis naturally will come to that conclusion. 100%. And that's what it means that the Eilam Hazeh is a place where Klippas Gevim, but that idea feels very at home in Eilam Hazeh. Right? Okay. I remember someone sent me a clip. We grew up playing tennis in my family, so someone sent me a clip of a professional tennis match. where some guy hit a serve, and it was called an ace, which means the other guy didn't touch the ball. No, sorry, it was called out. It was called out. And the guy at the other end of the court that was served, he said to his opponent, challenge that call. Right? Which means they now have these eyes where they have, it's all electronic. So they still have people calling the lines, but you can challenge it. And then the electronic eye will show you whether or not the guy who called it naturally was right or not. So the guy who won would have won, said, challenge the call. So his opponent said, what? I said, I'm telling you, challenge the call. Meaning, I think it was in. I think you just won that point. But they called it out, so challenge it. So the other guy's looking at him like, what? He says, yeah, challenge it. So he challenges it. And he was right. It was in. I mean, by this much, the guy had good eyes, but it was like this much. But he said, challenge it. So he got a standing ovation. Which we get why. I mean, kol hakavod, good job. But on the other hand, that should be normal behavior, right?
Who won the match?
What?
Who won the match?
Oh, in the end, I'm not sure. That point, the other guy, the guy who said challenge lost the point.
Yeah.
He lost that point. I don't know who won the match.
It was worth it.
I just saw that one little point. He was actually an American playing an Australian, and the Australian was just shocked. Not because he's an Australian, just because he was just, he said, what? He said, challenge him. Okay. And he won. Okay, so, but that's not normal. That's normal if you're a healthy person. Right? But that's not the way Olam Hazeh works, and that's what the Rebbe just said. Where was all this revealed? Where was the victory of the war? Where's the miracle of the Eibishter revealed relative to the victory of the war? But Teva Olam Hazeh tachten sheklipos gevrim bei. Shemenagdim heim, the opposition, heim giborim v'rabim. They're strong and they're many. But tzarich lilchem kenegdam, and you have to fight them. That's Olam Hazeh. You're going to have to fight forces of negative reality in this world. In yourself, but also in the world at large. Now, how you fight those people? I mean, there's different ways to fight. Right? Sometimes the fight is direct confrontation. Sometimes the fight is it's not paying any attention to their existence. Right? Don't let them get you. Right? I remember when our children were being beaten up in the streets of Har Nof by other religious children because those religious children were being taught some pretty horrible stuff about Lubavitch in their cheder. So what's the reasonable, what do you tell your children to respond to that? So on one hand, you hit them back. Well, right? So what my kids used to say, these kids would say things and throw things at them, and it didn't last long, Baruch Hashem. And the parents weren't in favor of it, but there's little they could do about it. They're teachers in school. So it's like a reasonable story to tell about on Yutes Kislev. So our kids used to just say to them, Ahavat Yisrael hi tavi et hagoel. Love of a fellow Jew is what will bring Mashiach. They would say it calmly. They're pretty good at it. They got good at it. It took them a while. I mean, obviously they wanted to beat them up, but too many of them. They're going to beat them up. And is that a response? Ahavat Yisrael hi tavi et hagoel. And then they just come home. Right? Is it sad that there are people who are doing that? Yeah, but that, even people who are basically good people can get caught up in all sorts of stupid stuff in Olam Hazeh. It's Olam Hazeh, right? If you're not careful, who knows what happens? Right? It was the last vestiges of the craziness that resulted in the miracle of the day called Yutes Kislev that we're celebrating today. So it even, 7 generations, there was still a few little bits of it left. was basically coming from one person. That person disappeared, and then they disappeared. V'yesh leimer, dezeu ma shekosev b'maimer, fourth line. Shahanesta nitzachan ha'melchama hu yichud ha'tata. That's what it means. When we said the miracle was yichud ha'tata, was the revelation of godliness within the context of the physical world, we didn't mean that it was a limited revelation, meaning a limited source of the revelation. The source of the revelation is the highest place in godliness, a response to their Mesiras Nefesh, which was the highest expression of their connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Af shegam, they say, even though this miracle, nimshach mi'or shelamayla mi'ishtalshalos, even though it came from the highest place, we still called it yichud ha'tata, lower level unity. Why? Sixth line, ki ha'or shelamayla mi'ishtalshalos, the light that's beyond ishtalshalos, shenimshach b'nei zeh, that was drawn down in this miracle, haya b'levush, was in a garment, shenoisen mokim, that gives literally place, that allows for the Metzias to existence, and Yeshus, and to a certain degree, separate existence. The apparent reality of separate existence. There seems to really be an opposition to HaKadosh Baruch Hu here. Okay, well, down here in Elam Hazeh, there certainly does seem to be such. In absolute terms, does anything like that exist? No. Okay, but down here in Elam Hazeh, it certainly looks like it does. And what's our challenge here in Elam Hazeh? To see that opposition is also part of the Ratzon of the Eibishter, and somehow it's there in order for you and I to deal with it in the proper way. Because it's all him. It's not that he's the Greek, but the Greek is there because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the Greek to be there in order to provide a challenge for you and I that we have to meet. Right? Now, the Greek has his own challenge. Not to be a Greek. Okay, but he failed in that. So as long as he fails in that, which he might, right? So then that failure also, how HaKadosh Baruch Hu does all this is beyond our ability to figure out, but okay, he's pretty big. The Abish is going to orchestrate that failure on behalf of the Greek relative to his own personal avodah, to be a person who's a good person in this world and acts in a godly way in this world, because everybody has that obligation, Jew and non-Jew. Okay, but what if the person fails? Okay, so it might be that there's going to be someone in the way who has his challenge based on this person's failure. Okay. So when some guy acts in a horrible way to you, in Olam Hazeh, it's not horrible, he wants to kill you, he just acts in a completely obnoxious and disgusting way, and you're really just completely annoyed. Take a deep breath and say, whoa. This is Hashgacha Pratis. This is divine providence that I am supposed to encounter this moron, because right now he's acting like a moron. Say he might not be a moron all the time. I don't know him, but right now he's acting like a moron. He might have a good reason. He might have some reason to act this way because of certain things happening in his life that are pretty hard, and he's not dealing with it the right way. And your response has to be in that context. What does the Eibishter want from me in this particular? Because the Eibishter put him in front of me. That's the Hashgacha Pratis. Is that hard? Well, that's pretty hard to do. But what does that mean? That means I see God in my everyday life. Right? The fact that this guy's yelling at me, well, okay, my challenge is to deal with that the right way, whatever that is. Now, it might be that the famous story of Levi Yitzchak Berditchev, the Alter Rebbe's good friend, an itinerant preacher came to, there were people who used to go around the Jewish cities, and they would get paid small amounts of money. They didn't make a very good living, but they would speak and usually say Musar, and often the Musar was pretty heavy and scare a lot of people, and how if you do Aveiros, you're going to go to Gehenna, and so you can't do Aveiros, and a lot of fire and brimstone sort of stuff. So in the days before Chassidus had taken root as powerfully as it did in later generations, and they would go from town to town. So in Berditchev, they would come to Berditchev. Berditchev was a very serious Jewish city, and Rav Levi Yitzchak was the Rav of that town. Rav Levi Yitzchak was not a Chassidish Rebbe. He was the Rav of the town of Berditchev. There's a story that they tell about Rav Levi Yitzchak that when his neshama was going to come into this world, so the Satan said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's not fair. His neshama is such a bright neshama that he will not leave any, there won't be any free will left because everybody will just be overcome by the power of his neshama. So the Eibishter's deal with the Satan was, okay, I'll make him a Rav of a town. That's what they say about Rav Levi Yitzchak. That story is told about Rav Levi Yitzchak. Okay. I wasn't there when Satan and the Eibishter had the conversation, so I can't tell you that, but that's what they say about Rav Levi Yitzchak. So he was the Rav in Berditchev, and he would let these people come, and they would spew their fire and brimstone and scare everybody, and then everybody would go home scared, and he'd go back to his inn, and then he'd, maybe say it in another shul in town the next night. He'd do that for a while, and he'd take his money and he'd go on his way. Now, what he was doing, he was definitely trying to get people to serve God better. It just wasn't necessarily in such a positive way. He wasn't a bad person. So there's a famous story of Levi Yitzchak of Berditchev. After one of these, and he was there, he was sitting there, was in his shul. After one of these fire and brimstone speeches where everybody walked out nervous, Rav Levi Yitzchak looked up to Shemayim and said, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please do not judge this Jew harshly. He has 2 daughters he has to marry off, and he has tremendous financial pressure, and it's from that pressure that these words that he says that scare the Jewish people are coming. Please judge him favorably. That guy who yells at you, what's going on in his life before you show up? You don't know. You don't know. Is he right to yell at you? Of course not. But do you know what's going on in that guy's life before he showed up to you? So maybe have a little rachmanis that maybe he's having a harder time than you are, and just say, okay, mutter under your breath for foolish lamb and go right there. You don't have to respond. You don't have to say anything. Right? God put him there for you for some reason, and that's your Aveda. Why is he doing it? I don't know. He's not winning right now. So that's sort of sad, right? I mean, this guy's losing. Why is he losing? Well, because who knows? Something really difficult might be going on in his life, and he's taking it out on you. Should he? Of course not. But who knows? And that level of sensitivity is really quite hard to come by, and is very, very serious. And what's that? That's bringing about godliness down here in the Elam Hazeh, where Klippas Gavim by, where there's a lot of Klippa around. Like some guy screaming at you, right? The person in the bank who's completely unfriendly, the bus driver who's unfriendly. I don't know. I don't make these comments about Israelis, people pick on Israelis all the time. I don't know. I think Israelis are pretty cool. I like Israelis, right? I think they're very real. I mean, there are Israelis who are very annoying. I mean, there's lots of Israel, but there are also a lot of Americans who are very annoying. There's lots of people everywhere who are very annoying. But Israelis in general, I can't say I'm a big fan of people coming from Chutz La'aretz and feeling superior to Israelis. I don't know. I'd rather be next to him in a bunker, to tell you the truth. But they can be, a little more harsh than what people from the West, other Western countries might be used to. In all fairness, if you were to realize what this guy went through, and he was 18 years old and people were screaming at him, when instead of being a college student where people are telling him he's the most important person in the world and teaching him basket weaving as a freshman, he was being yelled at in an army. So it's slightly different adolescence. But okay. He might be a little gruff. So when you show up after 10 of those people showed up at the bank teller, and the bank teller is a little on edge, well, how would you be after you just dealt with 10 people like that, right? You would also probably be on edge a little. So have a little rachmanas on the bank teller or the bus driver or whoever it happens to be, right? Okay, the bus driver today is probably not Jewish. It's a very few Jewish bus drivers out there these days, it seems. Because that's a different thing, right? You can still say thank you to the bus driver. Right? You ever see how surprised they are when you get off the bus and say thank you? I noticed, Baruch Hashem, it's become a thing from yeshiva boys now. Go look about them. They get off the bus and they say either from the, I'll say thank you if I get off in the front door. Turn to the guy and say thank you, todah. They yell from the back, they're Bachrim, they have no inhibitions. They yell from the back, Todah Nahag, and they get off. And very common now. They say thank you, which is very nice. They thank you to the bus driver.
A lot of times.
What?
You reply a lot of times.
Yeah. Something that go like this, whatever. Yeah. Kol hakavod. And that guy isn't a little less tense after 5 people say hello to him? Of course he is. Right? You would be. Right? Can you imagine? I mean, just in traffic, forget about the people getting on the bus. Can you imagine dealing with traffic with a bus all day? How frustrating that'd be? I mean, you've all been in a car in traffic. It's pretty frustrating. With a thing that big, can you imagine how that? I'd go sugar driving one of those things in traffic all day, right? Stopping and starting, and you can never sort of, the light's about to turn red, and you could zip in behind the other guy, and get through the light. We can't do that if you're a bus, What? Yes, it is true. They do it anyway. Many of them do. Yesterday, I was on a bus where I was watching out the front. I was sitting near the front. I was watching out the window. I said, "Come on." It was at the corner of Yafo and right here. I said, "Come on. He's not gonna turn onto." And he did, and so our bus driver was really, he's like busy beeping away at him. Said, "What are you doing?" I mean, and he was a stretch. He got out of the way soon enough. We made the green light, but it was pretty. Everybody in the front of the bus was watching him. Come on, he's not really going to turn, is he? And he did, like he's driving a Maserati or something, like zipping there. Okay, but he's probably also frustrated, right? He's having a hard day. Okay, wrong. What he did was absolutely wrong.
It didn't inconvenience him.
Well, he got beeped at, but.
How can you not get beat at his own? Every second you're late.
You're right. I assume he didn't do it in order to inconvenience everybody else. He probably did it without thinking about everybody else, right? Without education, that's what you're going to act like in Elamaz. I agree. That's where we started with this whole thing. It's a reasonable thing to talk about in Yotes Kislev. What's Elokus all about? Not being that way. Not being someone who says it's not going to inconvenience me, so it doesn't matter. No, it matters. It's going to inconvenience others. Right? A nice thing has happened. It's become a custom by a few people. I don't know who the people are in the mikveh that I go to every day. So people might find this horrid, but this is the way it is in mikvahs. Right? There's these slippers that are, common slippers. And you say, "Oh, that's horrible. Put your foot in someone else's slippers." Everybody in those slippers is sitting in a shower with soap going all over those slippers. Well, those slippers are getting washed pretty seriously every time they're worn. So it's not the end of the world. So there's slippers, like the rubber slippers, because the floor is not heated. So people, what have they started doing after they use the slippers? They stand them up against the little metal part at the bottom of the bench. They stand them up this way. Why? It's going to dry faster for the next guy. And a lot of people started doing that. It's become like it's very, you don't have to, you just leave them there. But if you do that, so then the water's going to drip out of the slipper faster. They're easier to find because they're just sitting there. And they also dry much faster. And you're going to want to put your foot in a dry one, not a wet one. Putting your foot in a wet one when you know it's someone else's, it's like, I'd rather not do that. It's dry, it's the same, there's no difference. And a lot of people started doing that. I don't know who started it. I noticed 2 sitting like, oh, that's a good idea. And I was all over the mikveh, you find them standing up. Because people someone saw someone do, oh, that's a good idea. Who's it a good idea for? The next guy, not for me. It doesn't make any difference to me. It's the next guy. The next guy should get a nicer pair of slippers. You assume he's probably Jewish in a mikveh, right? Like, it's not like you're not helping some Nazi. You're helping some Jewish guy. Okay, that's a nice thing to do. Okay. This is what happens when I have a shiur after Farbrengen late at night. Right? It's hard not to just keep Farbrengen, but that's what it means. Maluv. That's what it means. Helmaz is a place. Klipas gevim by 3rd line. Shemenagdim hem giborim v'rabim v'tzarich lilchem kenegdam v'yesh leimar. The zeo mashaka. We read this. We're reading it again. 4th line. The zeo mashakosa b'maymer shaneis the nitzochan melchama hu yehuda tato. It's lower level unity. Even though Shagam Nezeh, this miracle also Nimshach Mi'or Shalamayla Mishtal, it comes from the 3rd level that we learned about. Why? Kia Or Shalamayla Mishtal, this completely transcendent godly light. Shanimshach B'Nezeh Hayabelevush was in a garment, shenesin mukim, that allows for, gives space, meaning allows for, lemetzias v'yeshus, the existence of the world. And what's that called? Yehuda Tatah, lower level unity. Val derech, similar to Hamasiris Nefesh de Chanukah, the Masiris Nefesh of Chanukah. Shagilui di Yechida, the revelation of the highest place in the soul of the Chashmonaim, of the Matasyahu Banav, Yechida Shebenefesh, the essence of their soul. But how did it express itself? Hayabi Slavshis Bekeiches Agiluim. It was clothed in their conscious powers, meaning they didn't see reality completely differently. They saw the evil. They saw the Greeks. It's not that the existence of that level of reality stopped existing for them. No, they saw it. They realized they had to confront it. But they confronted it with the koyach, the highest koyach they had, but that koyach penetrated down into their everyday conscious reality. And on a certain level, that's the highest level of that expression. What happened next? We went up a level in terms of how we understood the nace. At first, we thought it was a higher level of elokus being revealed. Now we're saying, no, it's all the same level of elokus. It's just how it's being expressed. First, mamish in the garments of nature. That's the milchama. Next, lachrezeh, nimshach ha'or ba'efen na'al. The light is drawn down, this high, completely transcendent, beyond infinite godly light is expressed in a higher way. Shematzu pach echad. They found one jug, chosum b'chesme shel kohen gadol, that was sealed with the seal of the kohen gadol, which means it was a very, very high level of godly reality. She'ein anoisen makom lemanagid. On this level, there's no room for a managid. There's just godliness. That's why the Greek couldn't see it. The Greek's not there. Higher level of revelation on a certain level, obliteration of the Greek. But there's still a Greek to be. There's a Greek to be obliterated. That's Yehudi law. There is a level. You can imagine a level that is a level of multiplicity, but you are experiencing a level beyond that multiplicity. That's Yehudi law. Hashem Echad. So relative to that miracle, it's this lofty level of godliness is being clothed in such a way that there's no place for the opposition. When this jug is sealed with that seal, what does that seal allow for? And they can't touch the oil shaboy that's in it, l'tamei, in gashmis, to defile it. It represents in Ruchnius a higher level of godly wrath. There's no Greek there. There was a Greek that was wiped out. Mikol shekain, all the more so, ha'inyan dechosim b'chosm shel kohen gadol, the idea of it being sealed with the seal of the kohen gadol, b'pnimius inyan. What does that mean in pnimius? What does that mean in spiritual terms? Shiur kazeh. This is a level of godly light. She'ein chitzonim yichelim liga sham klal. That the chitzonim, the external reality, is not able to touch that place at all. And that's when Chassidus explains the nace of finding the Pach Shem, and it talks about the fact that it's a level of transcendent reality that the Greek can't see. The Greek doesn't believe in that. He'll never see it, even if it's right in front of him. He won't see it. All right? So that he can't touch that place. He can't defile that place because he doesn't know there's a place to defile. What's the Greek going to defile? So we talked about it yesterday. The level of godly reality that exists within the base of Mikdash, the level of godly reality that powers the world. What are the Greek deities all about? Powers of nature. Right? The source of this power nature, and this power nature, and this one, the god of this, and the god of this, and the god of this. That's the Greek. So they can defile the level of godliness that's responsible and energizes the physical world, even in its most powerful expression, which is the Beis Hamikdash. But a level beyond that, they can't defile it because they're not there. They don't reach there. They don't reach there because they don't allow themselves to reach there because they don't believe in that level of existence. It's their whole battle, the battle against the appreciation and sensitivity to such a level of reality. Right? What's the Greek in all of us? Human intellect. Mm-hmm. Rabbi Shab says, what does it mean? Hafatzas hamayonos chutza, yutes kislev? Spreading the wellsprings outward. What's outward? What's the most powerful expression of outward in Elam Hazeh? Human intellect. Human intellect is responsible for every reality of evil that exists in the world, because the only creature that can do evil is the one that has this thing called intellect. Lions can't do evil. Only humans can. Only humans can do something against the will of God. That doesn't mean when the lion eats the antelope that we're happy. We're always rooting for the antelope and not the cheetah, right? When the cheetah is chasing the antelope, we're going to root for the antelope. Run! It always ends up that he doesn't. 50 of them do get away, but that one that he's chasing doesn't, and the cheetah always wins. Okay, now the cheetah winning and then grabbing the neck of the antelope until the antelope dies from lack of ability to breathe. Is that evil? Not evil. That's just called lunch if you're a cheetah, right? And that cheetah will eat that antelope for the next week and ignore every other antelope walking around, right? A little baby antelope could by accident walk up next to that cheetah with as long as the carcass of the other antelope is sitting there. He'll just look up and, he's cute. It's not going to eat him. Why not? Well, he's got this. He doesn't need him. Not going to hurt him. What? Human? Oh, wow. Let's blow him away. I got to do it in such a way I can, keep his head and put it on my wall. Okay. Only humans do that. Why? Well, they have this thing called human intellect. Is human intellect a gift from God? Absolutely. Amazing. Incredible. Is it also the source of all klipa? Yes, 100%. The only creature in the world that can do evil is called a human. They do something against the will of God. Every other creature is just wired that they just do what they're naturally created to do. And what's that? Well, whatever they do. And even the creepy jackal who breaks into the chicken coop and kills 50 chickens. It doesn't eat them all, right? It just kills them. And then, I don't know what he did. He took away one that's very unfortunate for the farmer and a big pain in the neck and a horrible thing to wake up to. But that's not evil, because, the jackal didn't make some decision that he wants to, that's just he's programmed to do that. He's able to put that chip in it.
The farmer never blames the jackal, they blame himself.
Right, it's like, the jackal's an evil jackal. Evil jackal, what does that mean? You might get mad at the mouse that you didn't catch for a week, and he wreaked havoc in your house, and you kept finding, little things being chewed up, and okay, you'll get mad at the mouse. I don't know, the mouse is doing anything again. This is what mice do. What do you want from him? Can't do anything else. You're going to find the mouse sitting there with crossed legs reading one of your books in the living room. That's not what mice do, right? Okay, let's finish the paragraph. So the ultimate chutzah is human intellect. Who's that? That's the Greek. Got to get the Greek to learn some chassidus, and he'll stop being a Greek. Aval gam nes zeh, even the nes of the pach shemen, haya belevushe teva. It's interesting. The Rebbe doesn't say haya bislavshus. He says it was in the garments of teva. Not that it was completely clothed in teva. Completely clothed in teva means that you see the teva. This was still miraculous, but it was in garments of teva, meaning it happened in space. But it was obviously, something that they would go, wow, look, miracle, we found this thing. But you had to find it. And that's what it says, Shematsu a pach. They found the pach. It's not that all of a sudden the pach floated down from heaven. They found it. They had to do something in Elam Hazeh, in Gashmias, to find it. Okay. But it was obviously miraculous. And there wasn't a battle to find it. The battle was the war. They won the battle. Now they found the pach. So that's the higher level. That's Yehuda Ilah. But it's not the third. That's still Chavaya de Latatas. That's what the Rebbe says now. Shanez Metzias Pach Hashemen, Hu Yehudi Law, that's upper level unity, Havaya de Latata, but it's Havaya de Latata, it's still relative to nature. Ki Legave Shem Havaya, relative to the Shem Havaya. In its, even on this level, Ein Sinas Makam Lemanaga, there's no pretext for the existence of the opposition. There's no opposition there. The opposition has been vanquished. That was the war. Now there's just us. So what happened? Oh, the Eibishter did a miracle. We found the Pach Shema. But we had to find it in a space, in Gashmis. Aval mikol makom, nevertheless, gam shem havaya de latata, even shem havaya, this is the lower level, hu makar lisavos. It's the source of the existence of the world. It's the infinite light that ultimately is the source of the finite reality. When that infinite light is clothed in kalim, then what you and I call finite reality comes into being. So it's still connected to that. And that's why we said that's called Havaya de Latata. That's the middle level. And the highest level, this third level of light is drawn down in the highest level. The first level, it's drawn down through the garments of nature mamish. The second level, it's not on, I say it better, it's clothed in nature, mamish. The second level, it's brought down to the garments of nature, but it's clearly miraculous. There's no opposition. The third level, that's the obliteration of nature. It's brought down in an even higher level. The oil lasted for 8 days. The this nes ain't a beluvish b'teva. It's not clothed in teva at all. It's a complete obliteration of teva. Oil can't do that in teva. Gilui havaya de la'ela. The revelation of Havaya de Leila, Kameshu L'mayla Mislavshis, as it is beyond being clothed in nature in any way, shape, or form. Oh, so now the Rebbe just, there's still these three levels, but now a new understanding of how they work. It's not that a lower level of godliness is revealed in each, or a higher level as you go from the bottom up. No. It's all the same level of godly reality, the highest level imaginable, but it's being expressed in different ways relative to the miracle. Now, why is that important? That's going to be the ultimate secret. You see, there's only one more page. That's the ultimate secret in understanding why Chaf Dalet, Chaf Hey, Chaf Vav, and why not Chaf Dalet, and why not Chaf Vav. We'll see that. Tomorrow there will be no shiur. Thursday morning. What's today? Tuesday. That's what they should Thursday morning. Made it. I was wondering whether I was going to make it through this. It was always funny that there's no chassidus Yud-Tes Kislev in the morning. It's like a funny thing not to do on Yud-Tes Kislev. But it's only because you're learning chassidus at 2 in the morning the night before that you're learning chassidus at 7 in the morning the day after. It's not like you just learn chassidus. You just you've changed the times. And you're learning it in the Farbrengen at night, talking about it. I saw 2 former Mayanoters who live in the neighborhood in Beit Shemesh where I Farbrengen last